what do you think when you get in the venue, when you are warming up, when you about to compete? So
Yeah, so normally when I show up, I like to arrive a little bit early so I can just acclimate myself to, what the venue looks like, how the crowd is, how big the mats are, things like that. So I just like to get familiar with the setting. So if I have to compete at 10 p.m., for example, I'll show up at 7. I'll show up like 3 hours early and just kind of hang out for a little while. Leading up to the match, like an hour before the match or so, is when I get changed. That's when the nerves start to come. I start to, feel like, okay, now I'm going to compete. The whole day leading up to the competition, I try to remain as calm as possible, and I try to make it feel like a training day. Okay, I don't listen to music. I don't, get myself all pumped up. I feel like the more, anxiety you have, and the more hopped up you are, the less clearly you think. And everything I do out on the stage is very calculated. So I try to make it as close to a training session as possible. So when I initially start warming up is when I'm the most nervous. My stomach is always terrible. I'm always nauseous, and then of course the nerves make it much worse. So when I initially start warming up, I'm like, okay, I'm going out to compete. I'm anxious, slightly anxious, not so much anymore, but slightly anxious. Always nauseous, more nauseous than usual. And then once I start to get warm, I start to sweat, I start to build confidence as we go. And usually somewhere halfway through the warm-up or so, I start to feel good, my stomach feels okay, I'm a lot less nervous, my nausea kind of subsides, and I can kind of, just focus on what I'm going to do in the match. And then as time goes on, when I get closer and closer to the match, I just feel my anxiety go down and my confidence start to rise. And with every minute that goes by, from about halfway through the warm-up until I step on stage, my confidence rises. It's similar to Mike Tyson. He actually talked about this in one of his documentaries, where every step he took to the ring, he would get more and more confident. That's kind of how I feel. So once I finish the warm-up and I'm just sitting, I'm very confident. And then when I get to go out, I'm backstage, I'm ready to walk out, then I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's literally no way in the world that this guy could not even beat me, but just perform a single move on me. So then I get out to stage and I look at the guy and I'm like, yeah, there's just, this guy has nothing for me, and there's just nothing he can ever do to even come close to performing a single move on me. And a lot of that confidence, not just false confidence, it comes from training.
That's the question I would ask. Like, how do you build that? How do you get that? How do you acquire that?
Like when you're training with the absolute best finishers in the world, the most nerve-wracking thing, at least for me, is to go out into a competition and know that if a guy gets a move on you, he can legitimately finish you. He can strangle you unconscious. He can break your legs. He can break your arms. Like going out to compete against Gary at ATCC was like, fuck. Like if this guy gets a hold of my leg or gets a hold of my arm, like he's legitimately can break me.
It's not about tapping or not tapping. It's about breaking your...
like okay, I can get injured during this match. So when I go out against most guys who aren't from my team, I'm used to training with guys who can finish you, who can potentially injure you. And then I go to most guys in competition who are mostly just positional players. So I think, okay, worst case scenario is this guy passes my guard or almost passes my guard and maybe holds me down. But worst case scenario for him is, okay, maybe my leg gets broken and I'm out for a year with an ACL or an LCL surgery. So for me, it's the confidence comes from the training environment where I'm confident in my submissions, I'm confident in my submission escapes, and I'm confident in my pin escapes. So I know that even if I get caught in the worst positions, I can escape and then just go right back into offense. So I go out against these guys who've been competing forever, and I look at their games and I don't see any danger from them, with most of the guys. Obviously there's exceptions. There's guys like Paul Harris and things like that where, okay, now if he gets a hold of you, he's going to break you. But in most case scenarios, I go out and I just see a guy who's decently positionally strong, but there's no real danger. So it gives me the confidence to go out and know that I'm just going to be attacking this guy the whole time, and he's going to be defending the entire time. And so the confidence comes from the training room. And then as I warm up, I get ready, the confidence comes back. There's always doubts, obviously. There's always, you're playing, okay, what happens if I lose? What happens if this? And, that's normal. I think you need that, to you need to keep the respect there. You can't just have no respect for your opponents. That's when, things start to go wrong, you make mistakes. or you're just a shitbag and you just don't train properly because you just don't have any respect for the guy. You have to respect your opponents. You have to respect that on any given day, anyone can beat you. But at the same time, you need to have the confidence where you're ready to step on the mat and you're like, okay, I'm going onto the mat, and in that moment, there's no way the guy can beat you. When you're training, you have to be the complete opposite. You have to say, okay, I respect this guy, and anybody can beat me on any given day. But when it's time to go out and compete, and you step on that stage, you have to think to yourself, okay, there's no way this guy can touch me, and there's no way that anyone in the world is even close to my level.
No, that's amazing. Gordon, one thing that caught my attention here is that seeing you competing, that doubt that you said, that might be like 0.00001%, doesn't look like you had even that amount of doubt. So it's great to hear that you're human too, and you also have doubts. But I think if you compare you to a regular average person, the doubt that one regular person might have, it might be like 50%, and you is this 0.0001%, and just keep you, as you said, like the respect for your opponent and that, blah blah.
Really think that people, when they talk about mental preparation, need to take a step back and realize that almost every element of what people describe as mental preparation has physical underpinnings. Literally 95% of what I teach the athletes is physical skills. And it's my belief that every mental aspect of competition, the most important of which will be confidence on stage, is a direct result of the accumulation of physical skills. People tend to see things like confidence as a mental state. It is. But it comes out of the performance of physical skills. All my life, I've seen sports psychologists try to create confidence in athletes through non-physical means. And it always ends up being the same kind of cheesy motivational speeches, highlight video reels where they try to pump artificial confidence into people. And I've never been impressed by this, nor have I seen it have any kind of positive effect on athlete performance. What I do see build confidence is the sense that athletes are developing skills and using them successfully under conditions that closely mirror the event they're preparing for. Once they get this down, that's where true confidence comes from. Confidence doesn't come from words, it comes from accumulated skills, which experience shows you have been responsible for successful performances in the past. And if you accumulate enough of these, your confidence rises. So when it comes to the mental aspects of competition, I created a program where everyone was given a set of skills that they had to work on, skills directly related to what I believe is the most important elements of success in ADCC competition. In the gym, they accumulated those skills over time. I do it in two different ways, depending on whether these are offensive skills or defensive skills. For the accumulation of offensive skills, I like to have my athletes work with athletes who are lesser than themselves in ability, so that they start to gain confidence over time. Just as you would never send a beginner into a weightlifting gym and put 500 pounds on the bar and tell them to lift it. Rather, you would start with a wooden bar, then the metal bar, and then gradually accumulate weight over time, so you get a progression in weightlifting. So too in jiu-jitsu, you don't take a brand new move and say, okay, do it on Gordon Ryan. Never going to succeed. I have the athletes practice their offense on blue belts and work their way up. Defense, on the other hand, you've got to start them in the deep end of the pool so that they start to see what are their vulnerabilities. Okay, so I put them with highly competitive athletes at the start so they can see, okay, there is a problem here. And then even in defense, they start off with lower belts and build up their confidence over time. So just as a weightlifter builds up his ability to build weight, to lift weight over time, so too a jiu-jitsu player does it by gradually increasing resistance. Now in jiu-jitsu, resistance is not done by weight, it's done by skill level. And so over time, they started to accumulate this experience. In time, we were able to switch off and have them go against very, very tough athletes, each other. So, Luke Griffith will do a full power match with Gordon Ryan. Now, they're fully aware that there's no one better in the world than Gordon Ryan. So if you have a competitive match with Gordon Ryan, that's a very, very healthy sign. So they went from the start, where they were being programmed going against relatively mild resistance and building up over time, and then building up to the greatest resistance possible in the sport of jiu-jitsu. And their goal is not to win, obviously, but their goal is to provide a competitive match. Now, Gordon doesn't have any confidence issues, so for him, it's just good, hard competitive training against people that are, in some ways, better than those he'll be facing in competition. For the other guys, it's getting a clear assessment of what their current skill level is by going against the best there is. Then we add to this a competitive schedule where the athletes have to go out into competition, so they get used to the idea of performing in front of strangers on stage, getting used to the strange elements of going out, being observed and judged by people you don't know in a performance atmosphere. And so they were all given matches and WNO competition leading up to the event, ADCC trials, local grappling events here in Austin, and given a competitive schedule to fight and prepare them for ADCC. Obviously, as ADCC got closer and closer, this was pulled back because of the danger of injury. So within about 3 weeks out was the last time we had a competition. And by this method, confidence starts to grow. And so the mental preparation came out of those physical underpinnings, the idea of progressive resistance increasing over time for both offense and defense, building up to a peak where they're going against the best athlete in the world so they can get an accurate assessment of where they stand. Once you're giving a competitive match to the best guy in the world, you know damn well that when you go out in ADCC, you're ready to fight anybody.
And defense is broadly defined. So defense in symmetrical positions like guard, and then defense also includes escaping from horrible positions.
Yes. We're big believers in the idea of depth of defense, the idea that you should be able to mount defense all the way through from early stages based mostly around anticipation of identifying danger visually before it emerges, and all the way through to the deepest levels of defense where you are 100% defensive in terrible positions and you have to claw your way out and over time and get back to a neutral position, or even better, back to an attacking position.
You have an Instagram post on this topic. When you get ready to step out for the biggest moment of your life, ask yourself one question. How different is this really from what I do every day? If the answer is not very different at all, then step forward with confidence and do what you do every day in the same manner and ignore the hype and distraction. You're ready for action. By the way, for people who don't know, you need to follow John Danaher John on Instagram, because you have nuggets or large buckets of nuggets of wisdom often, which is quite profound, even bigger than jiu-jitsu. But anyway, so there's some aspect where you want to mimic the conditions of your daily training in intensity, in what for, so physical to that of the actual matches.
You asked the question about mental training. For me, the central focus of whatever small amount of mental training I give my students comes down to a very, very simple concept to understand. This is the idea of identifying competition in terms of its normalcy. Most people see training and competition as two different things. Training is normal activity that you do every day, and competition is the exception. Okay, it's different. You're going out, there's people watching you. There's a big crowd. They're making lots of noise. In fact, the promoters of shows go out of their way to reinforce this. Look at, for example, ADCC, when Gordon Ryan went to fight Andre Galvin. Okay, do they just come out on the mat and fight each other? Absolutely not. There's music, there's pageantry, there's fireballs. They're literally shooting fireballs.
Yeah, some dude in a tie sitting with Joe Rogan.
I heard about
some
that guy.
Meathead podcaster, comedian, whatever.
Which one was the meathead?
Well played, John Danaher. Well played.
But you see what they're trying to do. They're trying to create theater and pageantry, when in fact it's just a grappling match. It's just two athletes, a referee, and a rule set. That's the reality. Now, what they try to sell you is something which is not reality, which is this is somehow bigger and different. And they reinforce this with pageantry and theater so that it becomes not just a grappling match, but a grappling performance, the same way you have a theater performance. And my goal as a coach is to dispel that and say, when you go out there, there's only one reality: you, him, and the referee reinforcing a rule set. That's it. Everything else you see, the smoke, the fire, the music, is an illusion. And it's put there intentionally to make you feel a certain kind of way. And your whole goal is to see this as an illusion and walk out and see only the reality, which is that this is the same damn thing you do every day in the gym. The only difference is you're going with a guy you've never grappled before.
So the actual act of removing the illusion or realizing that it is an illusion, how do you practice that? So when you step on the mat,
once you're aware of it, I always have them to. It's like when you see a magician and you have his tricks explained to you, you never see the magic again. The first time you see a good card trick from a good magician, it's, oh my God. Then when they explain it to you, I did this, and that, step one, step two, then you look at it like, it's not that special. And when you explain to people this idea of the pageantry is an illusion, then just as when you watch the magician and you learn the trick, all the magic flies out the window, so too with the nervous response.
So that's for the pageantry, but what about maybe the physical intensity of competition? Isn't there an extra?
No, it's the same in every competition. It's not like, they're twice as strong at an ADCC as they are in the IBJF World Championships. It's the physical intensity is always pretty much the same. They experience it every day in the gym, and if you go out and you grapple Gordon Ryan, it's not like the next guy you grapple is going to be twice as strong as him or twice as fast. He's going to be a little stronger, a little faster, but not so much so that it completely changes your approach to the game. There's not that much difference between the human bodies out there on stage. So if you've felt intensity before, you're not going to be shocked by ADCC.
But in terms of in training, do you have to try to match the intensity of competition?
No, that would be foolish. Every athlete in the gym would be injured. Yeah. You can do it for short periods of time, but the training has to be carefully monitored in terms of intensity levels. Remember, we're training 7 days a week, a minimum of twice a day. You've got to keep things under wraps. Like, every other workout you can have one of the 5 rounds can be full power, but not 7 days a week, 3 times a day. That's just going to break bodies.
And the full power is just a reminder of.
It's more about skill development for us. It always comes back to skill development.
But what about matching the feeling of the intensity of competition?
So, yeah, periodically.
Periodically,
but it can't be
rarely.
Every single time. Not really. It's not rare.
Meaning
out of 3 hours of hard sparring per day, like 15 minutes might be like 100% full power. That way you that's more than enough to get psychologically ready for it, the intensity of conflict, but won't break your body over time.
Intensity of conflict, that's well put. There is competition doesn't it have that extra level of animosity? Like it's a little bit more conflict than it is.
It can. Sometimes there's personality differences. Like, for example, like Gordon Ryan and Felipe Pena, they admire each other a lot. They respect each other's skills, but they certainly don't love each other. That's for sure. So there can be certain matchup where there's more intensity, but then there's other matchups where the two athletes come out and it's no more intense than a hard sparring session.
The American lock is one of the first moves every beginner student of Jiu-Jitsu is introduced to and is unquestionably one of the foundational moves of the sport. In this video, we look at greatly improved mechanics and a clear look at the central problems athletes face when trying to use the move against skilled opponents. Our goal is to give you a devastating American lock in 3 core positions: side pins, the mounted position, and top half guard, in a way where you can overcome the main lines of resistance that you can expect against skilled opponents. Then we will look at how we can embed the American lock in tactics that allow you to overcome initial failure and succeed with other attacks that combine naturally with the American lock. Then we will look at proven and effective methods of using the American lock from bottom position and standing position. Let's take a deep dive into the American lock and make it a valuable part of your game.